Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Dominic DiTolla, and your co-host is
Chris Quinn.
And today we're going to get into some very different subject matter as far as a sports topic. I think it's one of the most fascinating events in NFL history. The 1989 NFL Draft and the effect it had on the National Football League.
Yeah, everybody says the 83 and 89 drafts are the two best. And going and researching these, man, the 89 draft had so many amazing players. It's crazy.
It basically produced almost all of the football stars that we watched as kids.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of the most interesting and cool things to look back on because it really shaped the way the game was played and the talent level of the entire game.
But it wasn't just good stories. It wasn't just great players doing great things. We have a couple of crazy stories.
We got some crazy stories.
And some franchises really getting screwed over in the steroid era of football.
And me leading to a drinking problem because of the Steelers' inability to do things with early draft picks.
Oh, so it was the Steelers. That's what led you to drink.
Yes. A lot of poor quarterback issues.
Let's be honest. Steelers, Padres, postseason.
Yeah, a little bit different.
All right, so let's get into it. 89 draft, but I feel like it starts in 88.
A little bit in 88.
Because Dallas, the last game, Dallas loses and Green Bay wins. Green Bay goes to Arizona and beats them in an upset.
Yes.
And Dallas loses to, I forget who, but...
Yeah, but they lose their last game,
yes,
which gives Dallas the first pick and Green Bay the second pick.
Which is so ridiculous. This might be the most important loss of their franchise.
Honestly, it shifted the balance of power in the NFC and NFL for the next 10 years.
Yes, it's crazy.
And it leads to 4 months down the road over a 2-day period and 12 rounds, 335 picks on April 23rd and 24th at the Marriott Marquis Hotel in New York. The first year they're doing the entire draft on ESPN.
Yeah, I actually, you can pull it up on YouTube. It's really bad footage, but it's really
great. Oh my God.
It's so fun.
Chris Berman has hair.
And he's a little skinny.
Little bit.
Mel Kiper Jr. actually makes a prediction that I have to bring up because it's so accurate. He goes, because people are kind of talking shit that Dallas drafts Troy Aikman first.
Yeah.
He goes, look, Troy Aikman is going to be their franchise quarterback, and in about 3 or 4 years, he's going to take them to a Super Bowl.
Which is crazy because not only was he right, because he's wrong a lot.
Yes.
And he has that nice Eddie Munster-looking hairdo with the slick back hair.
I can't take his hair. It just keeps getting taller and taller.
It's like building up a building.
But this is one of those instances where he really is so accurate with what Dallas is able to do with this quarterback.
Well, and this is, Dallas's draft to begin with the level of talent that they get, and we'll get into all the other Pro Bowlers that they end up getting in a Pro Bowl or they give away, essentially. But the one thing about Kiper is he's always been consistent about a draft strategy where you need to find that franchise quarterback first, for better or worse, and the picks that he's missed on, the picks that he's hit on. You see it. He's at least consistent in this type of thinking.
This is the type of draft that he is going to excel in because he wants people to draft the franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
This is his...
Because it's the first pick overall of the first round is Troy Aikman.
Yes.
And, Troy Aikman, one of the best quarterbacks of the 90s, he's the prototypical mold of a quarterback. And you can see that. But the weird thing about Aikman is this draft is so loaded with talent that there were some people arguing that Aikman shouldn't even be the first pick.
Yeah, I heard that a bunch, and that Dallas should trade away this pick because Troy wasn't worth the bevy of guys that they could have gotten from him.
Yeah.
Which was a mistake.
And
you know what I mean? Dallas made the right choice by going and picking up Troy because there was so much talent throughout this entire draft.
And the funny thing is that Troy Aikman, in his senior year of college at UCLA, wasn't even first-team All-Pac-10.
No.
It was Rodney Peete who was drafted in the 5th or 6th round by the Lions, who was at USC.
But that's what you see. That's where great recruiting comes in, is you see that he had the pro
he had
talents.
The physical makeup.
Yes.
I mean, he's 6'4", 214.
Yes.
I mean, you can tell strong arm, the way he throws the ball would fit well into any offense that you put him in and do whatever you asked of him. I mean, 6-time Pro Bowler. I mean, Troy Aikman was the guy in the early 90s NFL.
Yes, and he made Dallas, I mean, we see all the talent that Dallas picks up, but this is that first piece in the machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the best first pick for that year. I mean, it went chalk, though, because all of the guys drafted after him within that top 5 were also elite level prospects.
Yeah, that's why it was such a up in the air. It was pretty much like if a team needed a running back, they would have picked Barry Sanders first, or if you know what I mean. Like it was really that need that really Dallas lucked out on, that they needed a franchise quarterback, so they went and picked up Troy Aikman, because these top 5 guys, really, you could have any one of them could have been maybe top 3 or 4, but any one of them could have been that top pick.
Exactly. And they went right and did it, and it was perfect.
Here's my question, though. Like we were bringing up the Week 16, Green Bay wins, Dallas loses. If that doesn't happen, do you think Green Bay picks up Troy Aikman? Because I think they do.
Here's the interesting thing about the Packers, who picked second.
Yes.
At that time, he was, I believe, a 10th or 11th round pick a couple of years before. Their quarterback, the one who got hurt and allowed Brett Favre to play in 92, was Don Majkowski. Interestingly enough, in 1989, the Packers had a winning record but missed the playoffs. Don Majkowski made the Pro Bowl in 89. He was kind of being groomed to be the next starting quarterback. If Green Bay has the first pick, honestly, I don't know if they take Aikman.
Yeah.
They might, but they might go in a different direction, which they ended up doing it too, but they might have gone in a different direction than the player they picked second, because there are, in the top 5 picks, 3 other Hall of Fame players in addition to Troy Aikman.
Yes.
And do you want to get into the Hall of Famers?
No, let's just go down the way that's picked.
Okay,
so let's go
great.
with number 2.
Now let's go to number 2, who is considered arguably the biggest non-quarterback draft bust in NFL history.
Yes.
And that is Tony Mandarich.
And he was
offensive tackle at Michigan State, a dominant, forceful player. A lot of his dominance and force, though, for the Rose Bowl winning Spartans in 87 and the Gator Bowl winning Spartans in 88, was led to a little bit of extra.
Yes. And, well, I want to bring this up because I thought it was so interesting. The tackle coach, you know how there's like
defensive line coach. Yeah.
Defensive line coach, thank you.
Yeah.
That brought him to Michigan State, that was first kind of saw him in high school.
Up in Canada, actually.
Was Nick Saban.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
So Nick Saban saw this kid who was like 6'5" and was like, you got to come play for us at Michigan State. You'll start. And he did. And Nick Saban, I think, left like a year or 2 later.
And he came back to Michigan State.
But
yeah,
yes.
He Mandarich was kind of a skinnier guy.
Yes.
He was a late bloomer.
Yes, he was 6'6". I think he was like 230.
Yeah. And his brother was also a college player.
That's actually why he went to Michigan State, because they moved from Canada to, I think, Michigan, because his brother went to like Kent
State.
And that's why he got into this local, recruiting, that Nick Saban went and was like, hey, we got to pick this guy up, because
Nick Saban went to Kent State. He's a Kent State alum. He actually played college ball at Kent State with Jack Lambert, Hall of Fame Steeler, and Gary Pinkel, the longtime coach at Missouri.
Yeah.
And
I'm just saying, these are all these little webs that tie this together. It's my favorite.
I was rock hard like the McRib coming back researching this podcast. Like, I'm not going to lie. This took all of the spurginess in me to be like, oh my God, here we go.
I'm not going to lie. We're taping this in the morning. I thought Dom was going to have barbecue sauce all over his face and just be like, no, it
comes out December 2nd. I cannot wait.
Oh, okay. God, I thought it was already out.
Oh no,
that's why. That's why.
But anyway,
so
back to
Tony.
Mandarich. Back to Tony. He's kind of a skinnier kid when he gets there, and he's kind of a late bloomer. But in the late 80s NFL, it's something that started kind of in the 70s. Steroids are a thing.
Yes, especially with linemen.
And Mandarich, to his credit, because they're not illegal. I mean, they are illegal, but it's frowned upon more so than anything else.
They're not suspending guys.
Yeah. He decides to take them, and he becomes a very dominant left tackle in college.
I heard he took horse steroids.
Yeah,
was the popular thing at that point was racing horse.
Yeah,
testosterone.
I think the Canadian sprinter who beat Carl Lewis but got his gold medal taken away, Ben Johnson.
Yep,
he was taking the horse steroids.
But you could see the progress of his muscle mass.
Yeah.
It's scary.
He is two Connor Hannas, basically.
Yes. That's not even a joke. He is so much bigger than everybody else. And
that's kind of what leads to his fool's gold nature.
Yes.
Is that he's bigger and stronger, but you're not looking at him fundamentally or technically.
Yes.
And in a run-first conference like the Big Ten was at the time, go off of Mandarich every play because he's bigger and he's stronger than all of the other players. And this myth and legend comes around him. The scouts are drooling over him because nowhere at any time in NFL history do you have a guy who is as big or as strong or even as fast.
I was going to say his combine numbers are still some that people look at are like, wow, that's crazy.
And there were Cowboys coaches who even considered taking him at number 1.
So let's talk about this because this is in the Cowboys franchise. This is where Jerry Jones takes over.
Finally, yes. This is the first Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson draft. He had finally purchased the team from Bum Bright. Tom Landry is gone.
Fires 30 staff members.
Yeah, and they're essentially drafting to remake the roster.
Yes.
This is pre-Herschel Walker trade, which we could do an entire episode on that. My Christ.
But you see the possibility of them drafting Tony without this takeover probably would have been higher. So Tony could have went first if Jerry Jones didn't take over. Tony could have went.
Tom Landry might have taken him because Danny White was still there and he was still linked at the hip to Danny White.
Exactly.
I mean, Steve Pallure was there, and that's what Kuiper kind of said, where he was like, look, you take Aikman, Steve Pallure might start the first 6 games or however many games of the season, but you still take him.
Yes, because he will become your franchise quarterback.
Yes.
It's a really great analysis by Kuiper.
And Mandarich was funny, though, because I don't know if you had read it. I've read it years ago and read it again, actually, because thank you, SI, for having all of your articles on the Vault section, digitally. They wrote a puff piece on Mandarich about how he was this son of Yugoslavian immigrants from Canada who evolved into the incredible bulk. That's what the nickname was for it.
They were saying that he was the best offensive line prospect ever.
Yeah, and he was he quit school after the Gator Bowl to go down to Muscle Beach in fucking Venice, lifting weights and listening to Guns N' Roses like, we're Paradise City getting all jacked.
Hey everybody, just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
I'll tell you what's crazy is the Zubas pants.
Oh, the
Zubas! When you look at them, you're like, these guys are a joke, right?
Yeah.
And if you said that back then,
they would be murdered.
Yes, they would have ripped your head from your body.
They would have hung you from a lamppost with their Zubaz.
Only the toughest guys wore the Zubaz.
Yeah, I would never talk shit about somebody 300 pounds, 6'6". But that's what led into it. And there was also
this myth.
Yeah, it was the myth. It was like he went on Letterman and he had talked about wanting to fight Mike Tyson because he was using it as leverage not to sign with the Packers. He referred to Green Bay as a village.
Yep.
He wanted bigger marketing opportunities, but he was the sexy pick. He was the intriguing pick. He's the pick you don't want to take home to meet your parents.
But he is, and he was disruptive right off the bat.
Oh,
and
he was.
People said that his locker room attitude was exactly what you don't want.
Like with Aikman, where he throws 165 touchdowns, 3 Super Bowls, has an incredible postseason winning percentage, over 32,000 passing yards. Tony Mandarich, on the other hand, gets to Green Bay late.
Yep.
And the interesting thing about Mandarich...
Well, he tries to hold out for more money.
He holds out for more money. He gets in late. But the problem with Mandarich is he stops taking steroids when he gets to the NFL because they test for it. And there are interesting stories. And he's talked about this, how in college, how he'd cheat drug tests. He'd take a dog toy because you don't have to take your shirt off when you piss in a cup. He would tape it to the small of his back, in the middle of his back, right? He would fill it with clean urine, and he would run a catheter from the toy up behind his back, under his gooch and under his cock, and have a piece of chewing gum at the end of the catheter. And he's carrying clean piss, someone else's piss around on him. And when they asked him to pee in the cup, the catheter is right below his urethra, like right below his ding dong, and his fucking, right under his gluons. And he takes the gum off, and it goes in the cup. He did that for the Gator Bowl. He did that for the Rose Bowl. I mean, he was inventing all these different ways to cheat a drug test that you could in college, and he stops. And what ends up happening, he comes to training camp late. He doesn't, he's not in shape. He's not bulked up. And he starts getting his ass beat.
Well, I saw this. I thought this was interesting when he came to the combine. He was 6'6", 330 with 11% body fat. So he pretty much had no body fat on him. He showed up late to Green Bay, and he essentially lost like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So he pretty much lost 20 pounds of muscle. It's not like he was an overweight guy. You know what I mean? Like, he pretty much showed up a different player.
Yeah.
And they were like, what the hell is going on? And they put him on special teams for the first year.
I mean, during his first 2 years, they thought he'd be the franchise left tackle.
Oh,
they
without
had to put
a doubt.
him at right tackle,
Yeah,
because he couldn't handle it. And there are highlights of Reggie White when he was with the Eagles just destroying him. And in 90 and 91, after his first season, like you said, with special teams, he started 31 games, and he was getting his ass beat.
Yes.
And not only that, he started getting addicted to painkillers.
Well,
here's throwing him off.
Here's where the drug psychosis comes in. So with steroids, I bet the aggression is at 10.
Yeah.
With painkillers and this lack of steroids, I bet his aggression is at like 2.
He was talking about having needles in his jock.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And while he started 31 games in 90 and 91, he's not the prospect you want.
Oh, no.
By 92, when Mike Holmgren, Super Bowl winning coach for the Packers, basically the guy that resurrected him, good on you, he cuts him. He's gone by 92. Tony Mandarich is gone.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit that he was their number one pick. He sees how pretty much bad he is.
Like, he was known up until Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell as the greatest draft bust ever.
Yep.
But to Mandarich's credit, because I want to give him credit for this, 96, 97, 98, he makes a comeback with the Indianapolis Colts playing right guard.
I thought that was really, really great because he sobers up.
He has his shit together, and he ends up starting for the Colts for 3 years. He was their Peyton Manning's first season.
I know. It's awesome. And starting pretty much every game. He wasn't like a rotation. He was like really on that line.
Is he the dominant force that he was supposed to be? No. But
not
he's
at all.
Capable NFL starter who resurrected some mishmash of a career, which is a great comeback story.
Which you have to question. You have to question what he could have been if he didn't ruin his career with drugs. Because I'm not saying he would have been I'm not even saying he would have been a first round draft pick, but he would have been a great offensive lineman throughout his career.
Yeah, like he probably would have been like, if he was not roided up, somebody would have drafted him in 89 in a middle to later round.
Yep.
Who would have come in and been a capable NFL player and enjoyed a decade-long career.
Yes.
Because there's no hype around him, there's no nothing. But
that's not what happened.
That's not what happened, and Packers fans probably lament the fact of who the next 3 picks are.
Well, it's interesting, and I want to stay with him for one more second. With the way this played out, I feel like the Packers were angry 91, but happy 93, 94 because they get Brett Favre, and Brett Favre turns into their...
Yeah, I mean...
I don't think they would have gotten Brett Favre if this landed any other way.
I still think they would have, because when Holmgren came in 92, he needed a new quarterback, and their GM, Ron Wolf, who was with the Jets and absolutely loved Favre, but they missed out on him on one pick. They were willing to give anything for this developmental talent. So
they still probably would have drafted him.
Well, the Packers they acquired him through a trade because the Falcons drafted Favre. Because remember, I was talking about the 91 Falcons, and we'll get into the 5th pick because he is the most entertaining player probably in the 90s.
Yep.
But they would have acquired him somehow if Wolf, or the team that Wolf went to, even if it wasn't the Packers, they would have found a way to
get him because they were so high on him.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, cool. So that's number 1. Number 2, now we get into number 3, who even number 3 has a ridiculously interesting story.
Oh, God. And number 3, another Hall of Famer, running back Barry Sanders goes to the Lions.
And his story ties back in with the Cowboys.
Yes, it does.
Which I absolutely love it. So let's start with Barry Sanders in college.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's start with him in high school.
Okay.
In high school, Barry Sanders, despite being one of the greatest NFL running backs ever, is not a large human being.
No, I think he's 5'8".
5'8", about 190.
Yep.
He didn't start at running back until his senior year full-time. He was a kick and punt return guy. He's lightly recruited. Nobody really wants him outside of Oklahoma State.
Yep.
He goes to Oklahoma State. Barry, again, is found sitting behind another Hall of Famer, Thurman Thomas, his first 2 years at Oklahoma State. But Barry leads the nation in kick returns because he's Barry fucking Sanders. He's a great player. There's a great quote from Barry Switzer, who was Oklahoma's coach at the time, who was saying to his players, look, I don't want you out there hurting Thurman Thomas because they have a guy behind him who will just absolutely destroy people. Sorry, that was like an Alex Jones impression. That is not Barry Switzer.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll forgive you for that. But it's this Oklahoma State era in the 80s. It was when they were great, and we see why they teeter off.
Yeah, and it's a post-Jimmy Johnson Oklahoma State,
exactly.
Interestingly enough, because Jimmy Johnson had tried to get Troy Aikman to go to Oklahoma State. Didn't get him. He went to Oklahoma. Troy Aikman gets hurt at Oklahoma, and they're not a passing team. So when Barry Switzer says, I'll send you wherever you want, it's fine, he calls his friend Terry Donahue at UCLA. Jimmy Johnson, who's at Miami, needs a quarterback.
Yep.
Tries to get Troy Aikman and doesn't get him. Finally, in 89, when he has the first pick, he tells Troy Aikman, look, I tried 2 times to get you. Now I can finally get you, goddammit.
Now you have to come.
Now you have to come and play for me.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we see this Oklahoma State team, and we've talked about this before a little bit, but the repercussions that schools and programs face from prior years.
From probation and suspension.
How it really only hurts current students.
And that was kind of the interesting thing because 86 and 87, Barry is Thurman's backup. In 88, he's the man.
He has arguably the best running season, possibly one of the best college seasons.
He's the Heisman Trophy winner. He has over 2,000 yards rushing.
I think he has 32 100 combined yards with his punt returns.
Kick returns, yeah.
It's the way he dominated was so ridiculous.
And their team has talent,
yes,
but they're still in the Big 8. They're a mid-tier team.
Yeah, no, they're not.
He's the whole goddamn team.
Yes.
And the funny thing is Barry, he's the Heisman Trophy winner, 88, running away. I mean, he's obviously the most dominant player in college football. The problem is, like you were saying, all these past transgressions of Oklahoma State come back. They're going to be on probation in 89, and he still has another year of eligibility.
Yeah, he's a true junior, and this goes back even before Jimmy Johnson was coach, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
it goes back like 3 coaches prior to some bullshit.
Yeah,
you know?
Just some ridiculousness where the guy's already gone, but it's affecting the players. And not only are they facing probation, Barry Sanders' family doesn't have a lot of money.
Yep.
So it's almost, as we talked about in our ABA episode with the Spencer Haywood rule, he petitions and declares himself for the draft, and the NFL really can't do anything about it because the only league that was drafting underclassmen was the USFL, and that had folded 3 years prior.
Well, the NFL made the correct decision to back him because then it set a precedence to let juniors,
true juniors, not redshirt juniors.
Yes, true juniors come out.
And Barry did that and put together one of the greatest careers for a running back in NFL history. I mean, just absolutely insane. Over 15,000 rushing yards, 94 touchdowns. He averaged for his career 5 yards a carry.
That is insane.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely insane. He had 10 touchdowns receiving and 352 catches, even though he wasn't a main running back. Like, I'm in a running back in a passing offense. They didn't really ask him to do that.
They didn't dump the ball to him, really.
Yeah, he won the 89 Offensive Rookie of the Year, the 1997 co-MVP with Brett Favre, 10 Pro Bowls. And he did this in 10 years.
Yep. I don't know if there was a better running back in that era.
No. I mean, people talk about Emmitt Smith and who's better, but Barry Sanders didn't have a great offensive line.
I was just going to say,
Emmitt Smith for the goddamn line.
This is a great team.
We alluded to it in our Bobby Lane episode.
Yep.
Barry Sanders managed to put together this career on a team that is likely voodooed.
What I love about Barry Sanders' career is his college and professional almost mirror each other, where he really is just like the entire focus, and defenses still can't do shit about it.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. And the thing about Barry is that everybody remembers he retires after 10 years in the league. After the 98 season, he sends a news notice to the Wichita local newspaper.
Yeah.
And says, I'm retiring from the Detroit Lions, and he walked away. Just like Megatron did a decade and a half later.
It's got to be the running back position has to be the hardest one because of the toll it takes on you, I feel like. Because especially the way that those offenses ran just completely around him.
But he never took big hits because he was so shifty and squirming and everything like that. He
was probably the best cut. You know how a guy has a great cut to the right, to the left? He probably was one of the best at that.
And like guys like Emmitt Smith behind a good offensive line, it'd be like Emmitt for 7, Emmitt for 10, Emmitt for 15. Barry was just... It was like a jazz artist where it would be like Barry for 3, Barry for -4, Barry for 80.
Yep.
Like just the breakaway speed, he had it all. And it's a shame he retired earlier than he could have been. He likely would have been the NFL's all-time leading rusher, you know.
I think there's almost no doubt he would have been.
Yeah, I think Emmitt Smith would tell you, that yes, if Barry played as long as I did, he would have it because, he had a 2,000-yard season the year that he won the co-MVP with Favre. I mean, absolutely insane. Him and Aikman and the next two guys we talk about are all 90s decade players.
All Hall of Famers.
All Hall of Famers.
Tony, you missed out.
Tony. But pick 4 comes up.
Pick 4.
The Kansas City Chiefs with Carl Peterson and Marty Schottenheimer finally at the helm trying to resurrect a dead Chiefs franchise. And they pick...
Derek Thomas.
One of the most dominant outside linebackers of his era.
Possibly the best pass rusher. I kept watching stuff on him.
He was a pure pass rusher.
Yes.
I mean, when you think of pure pass rushing ability, he's that perfect 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 defensive end that you just send up the field to get the quarterback. Out of University of Alabama, Roll Tide Randy Ford, had to throw that one in there.
Well, it's interesting because he was so dominant. He had 7 sacks in one game.
Twice.
He
did it twice. And in one of the games, they actually lost on a Hail Mary at the end of the game to the Seahawks. And he had David Craig down for the 8th sack, but he escaped. But I mean, just 6'3", 243, 9 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pros, all-decade team of the 90s, 126.5 sacks.
I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. He never dropped off his production rate of sacks and pass rushing.
But he had 41 forced fumbles.
Yep.
Not only was he sacking guys, he was taking it away.
The pressure that he put constantly on the quarterback.
There's a great story Bill Cowher tells, former Steelers Super Bowl winning coach who was the defensive coordinator under Schottenheimer at the time. And Schottenheimer's like, look, I like this Thomas guy. Peterson's like, I like this Thomas guy too. Send him down. I'll send you down and give him the workout from hell because he didn't show up to the combine. They had to go to Tuscaloosa to work him out at Alabama. And he barely broke a sweat.
Yeah.
And they're like, if this guy's there,
we're taking
him. And they did. And throughout those dominant 90s Chiefs teams that came so close but never got to the Super Bowl, Thomas and Neil Smith, I mean, those were the guys for them. And unfortunately for Derek, his career was cut short, not by retirement, but by a car accident on, I think it was New Year's Day or just after New Year's Day 2000. He was driving to see the Rams play their playoff game in Missouri against the Vikings. And he got in a car accident and paralyzed.
Yeah.
And then he died, I believe, of a blood clot about a month later.
Yep.
And very, very tragic. But
another one of those just unbelievably sad stories.
And these aren't guys like Sanders and Aikman and Thomas who were like Hall of Famers who waited on the ballot and had people like, lobby for them and sports writers lobby for them. They were guys that were first ballot Hall of Famers because people have eyes.
Yeah, no, seriously. An interesting fact I want to go back on for this draft. It was the first one televised, and they actually invited Troy Aikman, and
he showed up.
He was the only player to show up, and they were like, "All right, next time we need more people to show up."
And they did. And they ended up doing it, and it turned it into a spectacle. It was great.
It turned into what the draft is today. I thought that was interesting because I thought about this with Derek Thomas not going to the combine. You wouldn't even hear of that nowadays. Like they would almost for sure, if not have like a private workout, for sure go to the combine.
Yes, exactly.
So this NFL is really starting to shape with this draft. And I just want to say that these top 5 picks, you have Aikman, best quarterback pretty much of his era. Barry, one of the
best, but yeah,
I was going to say
you got Steve Young and you got other guys,
and you got Favre.
Yeah.
But then you have Derek Thomas, one of the best pass rushers, and we get to
Barry Sanders, and then the 5th pick, which is the best one, and I got to do a Berman and Tom Jackson impression.
Yes,
prime time.
But it's so ridiculous to think that Deion Sanders drops to 5.
Do you want to know why though? Part of the reason why is Deion kind of wanted to manipulate the draft a bit. The Lions were kind of interested in drafting him. The Chiefs were kind of interested in drafting him.
But he didn't want to go to these.
He did not want to go to the Midwest.
Yes.
He didn't want to play in cold weather. He's a Florida guy, went to Florida State. You know, he's the greatest cover corner in NFL history. And there is I will debate anybody who says there's a better one. He is the all-time best man-to-man cover corner in league history.
Yeah.
And he had, at that time, the perfect size, too. And even now, it's perfect size, 6'1", 195. But he manipulated the draft to where he didn't want to play for those teams. But Atlanta's sitting there perfectly, and they need asses and seats, so it's a perfect marriage.
Perfect marriage.
And you see him in that post-draft interview with Andrea Kramer, and she had said something like, well, what would have happened if the Lions would have taken you? And he's in this tracksuit, Run DMC style, with an absolutely perfect Jerry curl, and he says, you know, Andrea, if Detroit took me, I'd ask for so much money, they'd put me on layaway.
Yes, it was perfect because that's essentially what he was feeling. He was like, I'm not going to these cold markets, which I wonder if they were as into, like, if that really was what deterred them, or if they were like, look, you're not even number 1 on our board.
I'm going to guess everybody wanted him, though. Everybody outside the Cowboys who needed a quarterback.
Yes.
I think everybody would have wanted him. And Atlanta at that time was not a good franchise. They were still playing in the Braves' old stadium. They called the Georgia Dome before they tore it down the house that Deion built, because he was the guy that brought people to Falcons games. He was the guy that made that team exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, 8-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 2 Super Bowls, 1994 defensive MVP of the entire league, all-decade team, 9 pick sixes, 1 fumble return, 6 punt returns for touchdowns, 3 kick returns for touchdowns. He had 3 receiving touchdowns for the Cowboys in 1996 when they were down on their roster because everybody was hurt.
I know. I thought that was ridiculous where they were just like, look, we need somebody out there to catch something. And Deion was just like, I can play.
Just put me in, coach.
I'll be receiver or cornerback. I don't give a shit. He was just like, okay. And he was great.
He was just a phenomenal athlete.
Yes.
Just a phenomenal athlete. And another guy like Thomas, like Barry Sanders, like Troy Aikman, you didn't have a second thought when his Hall of Fame eligibility came up. You're like, that's our guy.
I know, and then we're going to keep going back, which makes Tony's the worst pick ever. But if you're Green Bay,
you just see that and you're like, Ace Ventura when he finds out Einhorn is a man. You're just crying in the shower.
Exactly.
Just with a plunger on your face. Why, God damn it!
Why did I pick Tony at number 2?
But as we had talked about before, and I wanted to bring this up, we've discussed the first 5 picks.
Yep. But there's still a shit ton more.
There are 19 Pro Bowlers drafted over the next rest of the draft, over the next 330 picks. And these are like really good players. I mean, the Bears went back-to-back in the first round at 11 and 12. Donnell Wolford, solid cornerback, made a Pro Bowl. Trace Armstrong, great pass rusher from Florida, made a Pro Bowl. Eric Metcalf was drafted by the Browns at 13. He made multiple Pro Bowls. Eric Metcalf,
great returner.
As a Steeler fan growing up, when he was on Cleveland, he was the last guy you wanted to see returning a kick or a punt. And he was an all-around player. Like, the best way I can describe him to younger listeners and people who don't really know about 90s NFL, Eric Metcalf was a running back, wide receiver, returner. He was basically Christian McCaffrey before Christian McCaffrey was a thing. Like, the Browns used him as a running back. The Falcons, he had over 1,000 yards receiving one season in their run and shoot offense as a receiver.
Yep.
There was one game I remember, 93 at Municipal Stadium in Cleveland. He took 2 punt returns back in the same game against Pittsburgh. And these aren't like run-of-the-mill punt returns. They were electrifying.
Yeah, no, he was absolutely a great player that went 13th.
Yeah,
which is just ridiculous. I thought an interesting stat, which pretty much made Dallas the franchise that we know that they are in the 90s, is they, in the first 4 rounds, had a Pro Bowler drafted, because they were first, obviously, picked. But they had a Pro Bowler every single time. And like we were talking about pre-podcast, they literally traded one away. Like,
Steve Wisniewski to the Raiders.
We don't really need the Wiz.
He was one of the first picks of the second round. They traded him to the Raiders. But they also drafted Tony Tolbert as a defensive end. He was in that great Dallas 90s defensive line rotation.
Yeah.
Mark Stepnoski, who was one of the best centers. They nicknamed him Dalton from Roadhouse because he was smaller, because everyone was like, oh, I thought you'd be bigger. But he was one of the most agile, fantastic centers of the 1990s for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, this is where you see the Cowboy franchise
They turned it around. They drafted Moose Johnston, who was Emmitt Smith's blocking fullback for a decade.
Yeah. It sucks because I hate the Cowboys. It's interesting where you hate these teams in your little regions. I remember talking with my brother-in-law, and I was like, man, I really hate the Cowboys. And he's like, the Cowboys? I don't care about the Cowboys. I really hate the Packers. And I remember thinking, like, I don't give a shit about the Packers.
Yeah, right.
And it's such an indifference where I'm like, I just don't care about them. And he felt the same way about the Cowboys. But growing up, in anywhere in the West Coast, you have Cowboy fans everywhere. And you're just like, fuck that team.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, the first round still littered with Pro Bowlers. Wayne Martin, a defensive end from Arkansas for the Saints, great player. Andre Rison, which we could probably do an episode about.
For sure.
Wide receiver with Tony Mandarich at Michigan State.
Yep.
Drafted by the Colts, had a very successful career with the Falcons and Chiefs. Carnell Lake, who is one of my all-time favorite players, a Steeler. He was a linebacker in college at UCLA with Aikman. They switched him to safety. He played free safety, strong safety. He played cornerback the year Rod Woodson was hurt, and they went to the Super Bowl. Honestly, Carnell Lake is one of the most underrated defensive backs of his era. He was that good. Just an absolute turnover machine. And the reason why in 1997, Brett Favre and Barry Sanders shared the MVP, because Peter King gave Carnell Lake his MVP vote, and Sanders and Favre were tied.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, that 97 team, man, with Lake was really good. But
that's really interesting.
Yeah, we talked about Johnston, Robert Massey, a good cornerback for the Saints and Cardinals. Wesley Walls was drafted by the 49ers. He barely played for them, but then he goes to Carolina and becomes a Pro Bowler.
Yep.
Great tight end. Mark Stepnoski. Marv Cook was a good tight end for the Patriots. This is pre-Bledsoe, so he had to be doing something good. I mean, this is when they were going to move the team to St. Louis. Tony Tolbert, we talked about, from UTEP for the Cowboys. Tony Martin, a great receiver for the Chargers. He led the league in touchdown catches in 1996. Dave Meggett, also a great return man with a long criminal history. The Giants drafted. Ooh, we could get into that one. Chris Jackie, the Packers drafted, was their kicker on their Super Bowl team. Marion Butts was a great running back for the Chargers.
One of the best names.
Oh, very much so. He was Deion's teammate at Florida State. Mark Schlereth, who you see on ESPN, part of the whole greasing up the jerseys offensive line for the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
Went to the Redskins too, won multiple Super Bowls, had a great career.
I bet the NFL dreams of drafts with the amount of talent. Yeah.
And then the last pick not the last pick of the 12th round, but in the 12th round, the Steelers took an offensive guard who did not even play college football, but was a Division II wrestling champion, Carlton Hasselrig,
who never played college football.
Never did.
I thought it was so ridiculously interesting when I'm like scrolling through and I saw that, and there's like this big thing like never played college football, standout wrestler. You're just like, wait, seriously? And he's
he was, dude.
Pro Bowler.
Yeah, Pro Bowler. In 1992, when Barry Foster ran for 1,690 yards and had his incredible season, starting right guard Carlton Hasselrig.
What an amazing athlete.
Yeah.
To make that transition. It's almost insane where he's like, look, WWF is not banging down my door. I got to make this career.
The funny thing is, and why this draft kind of leads me to drink, is the Steelers drafted an offensive lineman in the first round, Tom Ricketts out of Pitt, who was Stepnoski's teammate. How could you not see that he's better? But they had 2 first-round picks because they had traded Mike Merriweather, who was the namesake of my fantasy Tucson comedy football team last year. It was Mike and the Merriweather Girls, 2019 champions.
Woo!
But they traded the pick away, so they had the 8th pick because they were so shitty, and they drafted Tim Worley, a running back out of Georgia. He was kind of the second guy behind Sanders everybody thought was a consensus, but the problem with Worley was he was an I back at Georgia. And if you think football strategically, you're in the power I formation. The Steelers didn't at that time run an I formation. They ran out of the pro set, the split backs. And it's a lot different as far as how you see the field, how you make cuts, how you read blocks. And Chuck Noll and the offensive staff were very adamant about using this instead of playing to his strengths. And Worley didn't really get it. He was supposed to replace Merrill Hodge, but never really did.
He didn't fit into the system.
He didn't fit into the system, number one, despite being a phenomenal athlete and a hell of a prospect. He not only had that, he had fumbling issues, which led to the coaching staff losing trust. Then he got into drugs.
Which led to Dom's alcoholism.
Well, which led to the team after Noel left because Barry Foster was in his doghouse. He was suspended for the 92 season when Cowher took over.
Yeah.
Foster balls out, and then he's gone to Chicago the next season. So
I know I saw because we were watching that NFL draft where people were talking about Worley being a better prospect than Barry Sanders because Barry Sanders was so small. And then there was one, and I forget who it was. He was just like, "You're so wrong with that. The gaps are not vertical."
Tom Jackson.
They're horizontal.
Dude, Tom Jackson is the man.
And he was so unbelievably right with that one little comment about Barry Sanders. You're just like, yeah, he's not jumping over. Like, he's not.
The shorter you are as a running back,
sometimes better.
It generally always is better because there's less of a target to hit. You can hide behind your offensive lineman.
And the lower sense of gravity when you're coming in together.
Exactly.
Yeah, they teach you that. That's like the first thing they teach you in Pop Warner. They're just like, get as low as you can. You're just like, why? And then they show you.
But then Miami, then the next pick, they take Sammy Smith, who is an unbelievable bust.
Yeah.
He was at Florida State. And he never, and they did that with multiple running back picks during the Marino era. They never found the right guy.
Yeah.
One of the best parts, though, was the Jets at 14, though. I don't know if you saw this with Kuiper. They took Jeff Loggeman, who had a decent career with the Jets and Jaguars. He was an inside linebacker that they turned into a pass rusher, oddly enough. But he was like way overdrafted for the 14th spot. And Kuiper's like, I don't think the Jets know how the draft works. And he was just shitting on it. And you can tell Chris Berman, who's a Jets fan and an old AFL guy, is just like, God damn it, Kuiper, you're right. I hate this team.
I know. When you actually look at the pick, you're like, damn, that's so right.
But it was just one of the most entertaining and exciting and deepest drafts ever with so many standout characters and 4 Hall of Famers and 5 picks. Yeah. But what I wanted to get to is because this year, and this is most important, and he's probably the only Broncos player I liked when I was growing up in Denver, there's now a 5th Hall of Famer who was drafted at number 20 overall.
Oh, yes. Yes.
A hard-hitting safety, decleater of Christian Okoye, 2-time Super Bowl winner, all-decade 90s team out of Arkansas, Steve Atwater. Finally, they let him in because if you were privileged enough to watch him play in his prime, he was the ultimate gamer, Steve Atwater. I mean, he was just the hardest hitting, baddest motherfucker on the field for those defenses.
He was drafted 2021, something like that.
Yeah, at number 20
at
overall.
Number 20.
Yeah, I mean, 8 Pro Bowls. And this is the thing. If Steve Atwater played now, he'd be an inside linebacker.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was a big dude. He was 6'3", 218. Like I said, the 8 Pro Bowls, the 2 All-Pros, the 2 Super Bowls, 24 picks. I mean, he was the linchpin of that defense when they transitioned away from those dominant 80s defenses the Broncos had into the 90s when they finally started getting over the hump in the Super Bowl. Like, nobody went across the middle of the field and didn't have Steve Atwater in the back of their mind when they played Denver.
When the Broncos went from that really cheesy Bronco symbol to like the really douchey one.
Yeah,
and
right.
They couldn't find that middle ground of it being cool. They're just like, look, we're going to be douches or we're going to be cheesy.
Yeah, it went from like the garish 1970s to like, let's go full Ed Hardy, bro.
Yeah, bro, come on. You better fucking hit that. You better fucking make that fucking tackle.
But
bro,
that's what's so incredible. 1 out of every 4 picks at the beginning of this draft was a Hall of Fame player.
I love that. Yeah.
Just incredible.
And the bust that Tony Mandarich was, because he was, of course, looked at as the greatest offensive line prospect. And what it was he was the greatest steroid user of that era.
Yeah, and when he decided to play clean, but I will give him credit for this. Unlike Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell, he found a way back and found a way to rebuild his reputation as a player.
That's what was really so sad, was he had NFL talent and kind of wasted it with his steroids. So I'm not saying
the media hype train and all that other stuff.
all of it, and the Zubas. I think that's what really took his career down. Not the roids. It was the Zubas.
Yes.
Thank you all. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to that podcast. This is just a stock message at the end of all of our podcasts, so we hope you enjoy. You listen to whatever athlete that was. Give us a follow at the Sports Experience Podcast on Instagram. Also, myself at Quinn Comedy on Instagram. Also, DiTolla Dominic on Instagram. Just follow us all around. If you have any suggestions for any athletes you want us to do, shoot us an email at thesportsexperiencepodcast@gmail.com. And we always are recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.